The world of product management in technology companies is fascinating. A product leader is arguably the most strategic role at a tech company. What are we building and why? Where are we going? What does our roadmap look like? Product leaders need to tune into the business they support, the customers they serve, the market and industry they are in, and the trends shaping its future. And then they need to orchestrate various moving pieces to deliver value in time to real customers, paying customers. Today, we're going to dive deep into the world of Drew Mechkoff-Nolte, Chief Product Officer at ThirdHome, and the specific markets he caters for, a luxury brand market. How do things work with these types of affluent customers? What are some of the do's and don'ts in the world of luxury? Are you intrigued as I am? Let's wait no further then. Drew, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about my time at ThirdHome and elsewhere.
Drew, let's get started with the basics. What do you do today for a living?
Yes, today I am currently the Chief Product Officer and until recently was the interim Chief Technology Officer for ThirdHome, the world's largest luxury home exchange. Think Airbnb, but it's an actual exchange. We're not renting for millionaires, people with a luxury bent in how they want to travel. I'm also currently transitioning out of that role. I'd been there for 6 years. I was running the tech team, the product team, the UX, and strategy and analytics. So it was too many hats for one person to wear. So I've currently been hiring replacements for all the various departments that were sort of run just under me and stepping back into fractional roles. So I'm currently also working with, and I'm very excited about this, I'm stepping in and doing some fractional work with Brink Literary Org. They are a great nonprofit out of Denver, but they have a worldwide footprint, and they run a publication called Friction. It is a literary journal where they take prison writing programs and focus on underserved communities and then take professional comic artists and mirror them together. So if you're learning to read at a high school level in an underserved community, they will help invigorate your lust for learning by bringing in comic artists and having them illustrate the story. So they do great work. Highly recommend checking that out if you're interested. I apologize. And I'm also working with I'm another startup called InDepth, so I'm also doing fractional work in the AI space. And they're sort of in a semi-stealth mode, a group out of Hong Kong doing KYC media analysis for banking and security verticals. And it's really exciting to dive into that. But back to the topic at hand of ThirdHome. That's sort of where I am right now. And the transition is ongoing for the next month and a half.
Drew, that's simply amazing. So many hats, so many things going on. You certainly keep busy. Um, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Tell me a little bit about your background in art and how that influenced your leadership in both product design and software development.
Yeah, so we discussed this earlier, but my background is in commercial art, and that's sort of where I cut my teeth. And I came up the product side to lead product and tech from that commercial art and the UX and design side of things. And so my early education in commercial art, it was a functional degree. And it's interesting. All of the designers I hire now there's the UX are in the psychology department. And it seems like a lot of the design and UX has shifted out of the art department. They're still there. I still work with art departments from time to time in my nonprofit work. But it always surprised me that all of these new hires have very little formal art training. So I came up, and I'm dating myself for those of you listening, I have a gray beard, back when they made us learn color theory, painting, sculpture, figure drawing, illustration, printmaking, before they could even touch the technology. It gave you this baseline in art. And then after just 2 years of doing nothing but art, then you got to move into commercial art and the design aspect of it. And again, I'm going to date myself. When I was doing this background, we were prepping for print design. So my background is in offset litho, screen printing, that type of thing. And again, if you can see behind me, I have like a little mini letterpress studio set up where that's sort of how I decompress this typesetting. It's a fun process, almost Zen-like. But it gets you hands-on, and it's very hands-on, and you learn to build and make and get a sense of craftsmanship when you're doing it. And I kind of think that design, especially commercial and print design, is a great balance between craft and engineering, between that form and function, because you need to know the process top down, bottom up. And with this in mind, this is my long way of getting back to answer your question. This is how I like to approach when I'm running product and tech teams, and how I like to train my engineers and my product staff. I think you need that holistic understanding of getting your hands dirty. You don't need to be an expert, but you need to know the process as a craftsman would to understand all the roles. On my current team, I have all roles shadow through the whole company of ThirdHome. Even the contractors do it. So when you come into our product, because the product is so complex, and ThirdHome is in the luxury space, and so there's a massive service and sales component to it. Think concierge, and we don't want that personal touch. So to understand even the tech product that we're building, you need to understand the service part of it. And the service part of it is a huge chunk of it. So we will have contractors come and sit with the sales team and sit with the service team and shadow them and listen to calls every day. And we'll have developers do it, UX people do it, product people, data engineers sit through it so that they understand things and learn how it all works. If you're UX, this includes training and shadowing in the development side of things, and vice versa. I like my developers to have some understanding of the UX side of things and the product side of things, and why and how we make tickets, and involved in the process. And it also means that you need to have I'm a big believer in personal growth. And I think when you're a designer, you always want to challenge yourself. You need to keep iterating, solving solutions. And if you stop, you lose your connection. And so without personal growth, I think you lose that too in the tech side. So I always fight for a training budget. I run a book club with my current product team. We do Friday learning. So every time we have a stand up on Friday, one person gets to present for half an hour on any topic they want. Last time, our QA engineer did a presentation on cycling because Tour de France was going on and he likes to cycle.
Right.
But we got a deep dive into the cycling world, which I knew nothing about. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So many things to talk about there, right? The holistic approach, knowing every part of the process so that you can understand customers in a really profound way, right? The holistic approach that your career brought to you in terms of, from the ground up, understanding, doing a lot of art, and then transitioning to the commercial part of it. I love it. And I have one question there. So when you are the craftsmanship, it has like a very immediate or personal feedback loop, right? Because you are creating, you are seeing, you are touching, you are and then as a chief product officer, you're managing product design, software teams. How does that work there? How do you balance creativity with technical requirements, with feedback loops, with iteration? How does that work for you?
That's a good question. You're right, because when you're doing physical design, and especially print, you have an artifact that you can work with. And then once you move up to, say, a CPO level, it's the physicality of it evaporates. It's a completely different way of approaching things and a completely different way of building and thinking. In the end, I think I still approach it in a very similar manner and still look at it as a creative endeavor, because people are the factor. When you hit the CPO level, you are working in the weeds in the product and
Mhm.
overseeing it, but you're also managing the relationships. And there you have to, in the same way commercial art, it has to be effective. You have to meet the person you're advertising to, the person you're designing for, where they're at. You have to do the exact same thing and apply those to stakeholder management. Those same tools and those same psychological tricks. I wouldn't call them tricks, just connection points between
Yep.
you and who you're trying to build for. And you have to listen and you have to consume as much from them as they get from you. Um, I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does, it does. And so talk a little bit more about those customers and then the software, right? How do you integrate the luxury brand experience? And you talked a little bit about of it, the concierge experience and the service part of it with the cutting edge software products, right? How do those two live together?
Yeah. So to give you a little background of what we're building here and how I mirror those two, or how we mirror those two things at ThirdHome. So ThirdHome is a luxury home exchange. You put a week, there are different types of home exchange. There's indirect and direct. And most people think of the direct style, like well, there's that movie, The Holiday, where you swap your home at the
Yeah,
exact same time.
the
It's
British
it's
one.
not
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're going to swap a home. I'm going to fall in love with some guy in the city, right? Like the rom-com. We actually have customers in the sales calls like, is this like The Holiday? They love that movie and they want it. They want that experience. Uh, we do indirect exchange. So you come on board, you put in some time in your home, a week, we do all week intervals, into the club. Then you get travel credits out. And those travel credits are based on the value of your home, the seasonality of the location, a bunch of factors. And you can use those. So say I get 4 travel credits, I could take two travel credit weeks. I could kind of trade down, or I could put in another week and get 8 and trade up, get 1 week. So it's aspirational. So you can go up. Um, so there's a search component, there's a trust component. I'm giving you something of immense value. And a lot of our homes do not have rentals or do not rent on Airbnb. A bunch of them do. Well, I think we've kind of tipped the scales. It was about 40% did a few years ago. Post-COVID, it's kind of inched up a little bit. And I think we're just now passing 50% or more of them on um, rental platforms. So so it's a hard line to walk because there is such a trust component and a service component to what we do. And because of the concierge aspect and the service aspect of it, a lot of the tools that we build for our internal. So the clientele that we are building our tech for is our own team. That's why shadowing is so important, because probably 30% of all of our bookings happen, but the person just expects to call, I want this place. And then they have, in every person, every member in our club has a personal contact, picks up the phone. Yes, I can help you get on it. Can I help you with anything else? We have a custom travel agent, which is great. Um, and she can even book the tickets and just have them sent straight to your phone. They want that ease and level of access. So when we're building and integrating our tech, we have to think of the whole process and the internal tooling too. And then we have a couple of other issues. We have to walk the line. Our affiliates have really sleek, and when you look at the design of some of these sites, have really sleek, and I'm sure you've seen them. When you think of travel design, what do you think of?
Booking, Airbnb, is that the question? What sites do I typically go to?
Yeah, the visuals. Like a lot of our, if you go to an affiliate, like a
Oh,
luxury.
like photos. I think loads of photos of very nice properties. I photos will get me first, right? I want to see the property. I want to see kind of the location. I want to see the view. I want to kind of experience that property from the moment I start seeing the first pictures.
Yeah, so we have to be photo heavy and photo accessible too. Our average user is 65 plus,
Oh,
and with a mixed bag of tech understanding and adoption. So And a not insignificant portion of our user base have accessibility requirements too, reduced motion, high contrast modes, etc. So a lot of those are our affiliate partners have those giant photo backgrounds with white text, and it looked like really thin. Sometimes you can barely read it. And we've tested designs like that, and they just didn't fly. We
Right.
just saw our conversions tank when we did that type of design. We had to do something that it has to look luxury, and it also has to be functional for a wide range of accessibility and an older user base. And all the way a while, we're running this as a lean, fast-paced startup ethos to get features done for the sales and service team, and to try and pump out stuff. But we also have to unit test and test. QA is super important on every step. I mean, we test the Kajibas out of everything just because of our user base, and to meet their expectations. But we have to do it in a way that doesn't slow us down, which is that's also a line we have to balance. Sometimes we get a feature out onto staging and we get the whole team to test it and every department to test it in every scenario. And so it's like a group effort when we're trying to get luxury software out there that requires some like the whole company at times, even though we're probably only 15 to 20% of all the company on the tech side.
Wow. And so what did you do? Did you like reduce the size of the photos on that specific thing we were talking about? What was the end solution to that?
We walk the line, and also there's user generated content. Sometimes our users don't have photos.
Right.
Sometimes we have to work with a client or a member to find a professional photographer in their area to get high quality photos.
Right.
Because if we don't, your property is not going to book. You're not going to meet our members' expectations. It could be a beautiful property, but if you're snapping phone photos, and we have members who have been in there, been members since the mid-teens, and they took photos with 1 megapixel phones, and they just don't fly on today's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, we refactor our photos surprisingly a lot as new tech comes along. One of the big things we have in our backlog right now is shifting to WebP. If you guys aren't familiar with it, I love the WebP. It really compresses down in a way that saves a lot of space, especially in some of these bigger photos. It's really sped up our site by quite a bit. I've like manually converted all of our just static assets to WebP, and that's just shaved so much of that first paint time off. It's phenomenal.
Nice. What other challenges have you encountered? We talked about trust, design, and accessibility. Any other challenges that come to mind that you have found with this type of clientele?
Yeah, they expect a certain level of access into the process and into the leadership that you might not get with another user base. Surprisingly, I run front line sometimes. I communicate directly with our clientele. If they have issues logging in and it's a tech issue, sometimes they might be on an older browser or something like that. And our support staff might not know how to see that. And our tech staff do, but they just want to talk to someone to get it done. So they forward it to me. So sometimes I am playing frontline tech help. I have helped members install applications and browsers on their phones. I have just a few weeks ago, a member was concerned about our third-party cookie usage, and that's a big concern from our members: privacy and security. A
Right.
big chunk of our member base do not want to be on the web, do not want to be known. We have athletes, politicians, celebrities in different forms who sometimes don't want it to be known this is their home. So we have to have tooling in place to set their mind at ease, to hide their properties from search engines and from non-members. We don't display their names and make sure it's very clear that their privacy and their personal information is protected. So this one member was coming on board and he was concerned about it. So I did a complete audit of all our third-party services and sent it on up to our head of legal to review all of their T&Cs just to put this one potential member's mind at ease. But they came in and converted, and we're very happy, and it set the stage and the service level. So even the service level for an executive on the tech side, you need to be there for your user base.
Have you ever talked to someone, been on the phone with one of these customers and go like, wow, I'm on the phone with XYZ?
Sometimes, yeah, there, I've never interfaced directly with celebrities, but sometimes I'm talking to someone and they're talking about their home, which might be a $250 million chateau in France, right? And this is their second or third home. I'm like, oh yeah, this person has some sway in the world. Or, someone who was talking to a client and they were saying, I rent this home for $120,000 a week. Like, oh, a week. All right. So, and then you have to explain why. That's why people and our members love ThirdHome, because that might be your rental for a week. And if you want to rent something comparable, you don't want to spend $120,000. With ThirdHome, you can spend $10,000. You give us a week of your place, you pay an exchange fee, and that's it. That's how ThirdHome
Right,
operates. We take a
right.
small exchange fee. You give up your unused time, and then you have access to something like that without spending that money. So our user base, our member base, love it. Uh, but yes, yeah, we have minor celebrities throughout. In fact, our lawyer, who I was just talking about, he's sort of NHL. He's an NHL celebrity. His name's Stu Grimson. If you've ever, you'll just be watching ESPN. If hockey's on, sometimes he's up there doing commentary.
Right.
So our lawyer is known for being an enforcer in the NHL back in the 90s. If you Google his name, it's just pages of him beating up people on the ice. He's the sweetest man ever and a good lawyer. So he's
Very good.
on staff.
Do your clients care about who is going to use their home? Is there like a vetting process for like, yeah, I don't want this guy using it, or oh, I will love this guy using it, or they don't care?
We've heard that from a select minority who say we don't. So we have several different tiers, but they're all members. We have the affiliate level. So you can be a fractional owner. It's sort of the luxury term for a timeshare. If you want to buy a timeshare, but you want it to be a little nicer, a luxury resort. These are typically not all inclusive. They're a little higher tier. And the fractional users typically are a smaller tier, though they're not worth as much as our standalone users. And then, but we want to be aspirational. So and the way the club was built and designed was to make sure that you could trade up to those. So we make sure and make it very clear once you're in the club, because we do background checks, ownership checks, make sure proof of ownership, that once you're in, you're vetted and you can trust who we place within your home. So, we keep it open. If that fractional owner wants to give us 10 weeks in a row and save up for years and then go to a 30, $40 million house somewhere, that is a dream. You can do that with ThirdHome.
Nice. Do you have a preferred? I mean, I guess you see a lot of the homes, right? Is there one that you go like, oh, I would really love to go to that one?
That's a good question. There's a perk. I've gotten to take a few trips, and it's a lovely experience. We actually get travel credits as employees, and I have enough saved up. I could probably blow it on that castle in France if I wanted to, but then you have to pay the staff, which would be tough. I will sit there working on my laptop, and my wife will come by. She's like, "Oh, what is that place?"
Right.
And I have no idea what she's talking about because I've been doing this like long enough. It just shoots past me.
Right. Right.
I don't even see the home. It's like I don't see the homes at all anymore. I just see the code, the functionality.
You see the
Yeah,
matrix. You don't see.
yeah,
You see the green lines going. Good
yeah. That's
stuff.
what I feel like. Yeah.
Um, what are some of the trends or innovations in software development do you see having the biggest impact on the future of luxury services?
Yeah, this is a good question. You posed this earlier, and I was trying to think about it. But I think right now, and I think everyone is jumping on the AI bandwagon, and I do not think it's going to disrupt our business because our clientele want that personal touch and, in fact, demand it. It's part of their expectations. That being said, I think the RAG chat systems, and that's something that's on our media um, roadmap as well, has the ability to help customers and to streamline what we can do in just a massive way. Are you familiar with RAG?
No, no.
Um, so it stands for retrieval augmented generation. So
Okay.
it's just a LLM skin essentially, right?
Got
So
it. Okay.
imagine an LLM in our onboarding process as an example. It comes in and it pulls their HubSpot record, it pulls our FAQ, and it pulls you can put in, say, a JSON file on each onboarding step, and it pulls in. So it's contextually aware of the exact step you're on, of what the users filled out, what their home is, what their needs are, how much we've communicated with them, and can help them through the process in an automated way. And so it's not designed to replace the human element, but it gives a way for our support and sales staff to handle a larger book of business more effectively.
Right.
And I think it'll be a game changer, and especially once we integrate it into the wider application where it can have knowledge of your past trips, your search history, and say, hey, this new property came up. Let's get it booked for you. Here, what can we do to make it happen? So it can mimic some of the human personal touch into the application in an automated way. There's still going to be the human touch, and as you build something like that, especially in our case, our support staff who's assigned to the member base is going to have to monitor it to make sure they know what's happening. But it's going to be a force multiplier, as it were, for I
Yeah.
think our support staff.
The personalization is being taken to a different level. Completely agreed. Um, let's talk a little bit about you wear different hats. You're a chief product officer. You were also, until very recently, acting as the chief technology officer. Even just as a chief product officer, you're doing a balancing act between designers, developers, and um, what are the key challenges you see in managing those cross-functional teams, and how do you address them?
Yeah, and there we in earlier days before this role, when I was doing fractional beforehand, and I stepped into this role a little more permanently back in the late teens. I had a podcast, we talked a little bit about it, called Design versus Dev, and we sort of addressed that issue because the designer in me always approached it as user first and how it needs to function, right? And the developers are always like, it doesn't matter. Here's a form. It can be ugly. They can just input their name and hit submit, and they're going to be happy because it works. It's like, no, that does not work. A prime example of that is we worked on a luxury rentals platform. And the developers said, well, we're going to get the MVP out and we're just going to have it be a request system. It won't do instant booking. I was like, no user in their right mind expects a request system like that anymore. They
Yeah.
expect instant booking. That's just the nature of it. They've been trained to do it at all levels and all walks of life. I pushed. This was before I was in sort of the decision making role, that this is going to fail. But the developers run out. The developer at the time, we were run by a CTO, product was tech underneath them, and the developers run out, and we had to go back and redo it. There's always a push and a pull. But that being said, I'm very much aware, if you're running both teams, I can't run it as a product or as a designer first. You have to think about all of it and how you bring it together for cohesion and unity. And I think that cross training that we were talking about earlier helps a lot, because you need to learn to empathize with your team as well as the users, because everyone is working for the same. We're all working. We all want to do good work.
Yeah.
And when you can step back and look at the wider picture and realize, like, that a lot of us are so focused on a specialty And then if you can put your head up and see that wider context, it just helps with that team cohesion. And so we have the added issue of we're not just a tech company, we're a sales and service company too. So, our UX and PMs go to our weekly service meetings with the sales team. They hear the sales numbers, they hear the service numbers, they hear what the members are saying every week firsthand. They just get, here's what we're dealing with this week. Here's where we have too much inventory. So, and we're small enough, and I want our developers to be known by the rest of the team too, the sales and service team, that they support. It builds gratitude and understanding of the lift that's being asked. We're very open. I implemented a system where anyone in the company can suggest an A/B test or a feature. And they do, and these come in all the time, like daily from our service staff. And it really helps. But when that comes in, the engineer needs to oh, they're asking for this again. Well, let's talk to why, because they're talking to users and customers. And once the engineer goes through that discovery, it's not a bother. It's not a worry. It's I see what they're trying to accomplish, and they can help iterate on the idea to make it better. So the cross training, the integration, and just the awareness of the company as a whole really helps, I think, with that challenge of the cross functional cohesion.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind is context, right? For people to understand the context and to understand the business and how the business makes money and what matters to the business. The other day, another chief product officer was posting on LinkedIn saying, hey, I typically talk about healthy tension between developers and designers, right? But I don't know if tension is the right word. And so he started just thinking out loud about it. And he was putting the example of, say, Black Friday is approaching and we want to launch new features so that we can sell more. But then the technology team is going like, hey, but we should have the best stability for that Friday, because if it goes down, no matter what features you have, it's just not going to work, right? So different perspectives, yeah. Right? But as long as we all share the context and understand how we're making money and what matters at the end, then whomever is on top can make a decision based on priorities.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And sharing data helps with that as well, especially in that case in Black Friday. If you can see, here's what happened in the past, here's what we sold in the past. And if everyone sees it and knows what the developers might know, okay, we need to strengthen the architecture over here for this specific product suite. And the designers might say, hey, we could improve this interaction here in a timely manner that won't disrupt that, right? And data and context, I think, working in suite, in partnership. Yeah, that's a good way. You're right. You don't want the tension, you want the context. Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. So people might be listening, they might be aspiring to become a chief product officer in the tech industry. What will be your advice to them?
Don't. It's be very clear what the role is. I have talked, it's very different. I think there are many paths up to being a CPO, and there are many ways of approaching it. I've talked with a lot of PMs, and I've worked with a lot of PMs who have more experience than I do in the project management side. I came up doing PMing for MVPs and then built the team, as opposed to having been inside a team and PMing for larger companies. So my background is really in that MVP, rapid lean development sort of stage. And that's a different style of working. And you really have to shift. You have to shift your mode of thinking when you move up. And oftentimes I find, and I think this is true for developers, and I think it's true for PMs, and I think it's true for the UX side. We find when I'm hiring, I tend to find the people who last, at least on the way we structure our teams, and are better integrated, have a little different background. Our best engineer, our two best engineers, well, our three best engineers. We had an English major, a hairstylist who did boot camp. And I actually tried to promote her to CTO before she moved on to greener pastures. So I was bummed about that. That was last summer. Deanna, if you're listening, I'm still salty at you about that, because she was a phenomenal developer. and architect. And then we had a lawyer who just burned out on law, but he was so good at the details. So that was our core senior engineering team for years, and they all had these different backgrounds. And it helps. I think it gives you different perspectives and lets you work with those cross-functional teams, especially when you get to the CPO role. Your focus isn't so much on the product, but it has to filter the product focus up to the business focus. You're sort of the funnel between the two. You know, I also think, I came through it through the design side into the product, then up to the CPO and strategy. So I like designing, be it a logo, layout, a product, or a ticket or a strategy. You have to know how things work. You can't be an architect if you don't know the tensile strength building material like an engineer, right? So this is my unpopular opinion for the thing. I think to be a C-suite level and a VP level, you need to understand the strategy, operations, product. I put them all in the same bucket. You don't need to be an expert of them, but you need to know the functions of everything underneath you, and have working knowledge of it all to be functional. When I've known several, I know several good non-functional CTOs, but the ones that I work best with can speak the language with me. And I don't know if this is on topic here. I'd also put it when you're coming up into a C-suite role, I'd put it akin to a phase transition in science, or at least that's how I originally thought of it. When you go from gas to liquid, liquid to solid, sort of as you move up the ranks, you have to change your material makeup and how you think. You have to change your state.
Yeah.
You get enough pressure and density, and then boom, you're something new. You have to monitor and you have to realize the dynamics have changed as you move up. And you have to shift your point of view as you move up. And be very clear, running PM on a project is very different than being a director where you're running a suite, which is very different from, and you're still functional than maybe a VP role where you might be semi-functional in the weeds, but also sort of translating that up to a C-suite executive. And then being a C-suite executive, all of a sudden, it's a completely different beast. You're building, and your stakeholder management is much different and much broader. And it's not the same type of work, even though you have to keep an eye on the chain all the way back down to the PM. I don't know.
When you say that, do you mean, no, I completely agree, but I just want to understand if you mean, so your scope becomes much larger, but your involvement in the details maybe it's smaller, right? Just because you're purviewing more, or you have a different type of influence and you have to get things done through others. You're not doing so much yourself. You're leading others to do stuff. Is that what you mean when you like change?
Yeah. You have to take a step back and trust the team that you've trained and built that's there.
Right.
When you're a PM, you focus on the tickets, stories, epics. And then when you become a director, you're looking for a collection of those team and working in concert, right? Your scope has changed. You just need awareness of it. You have to trust the people. An example of this is when I moved into this role, we brought in a new director of engineering. We were rebuilding a major feature, and we had scoped it out, and I had helped scope it out, and I had one form that I wanted to do, and he came in and he completely blew that out of the water. It's like, no, in this time frame with this team, we need to re-architect it like this, and it's like, oh, the craftsman in me. I'm like, I know exactly what I want for this feature and how it should be engineered, and the UX person has it designed to look this way. But I had to trust him. It was his call and his team, even though, he was reporting to me. And I had to take a step back and like, okay, he knows the budget, he knows the timeline, he knows the team, and he knows what it's going to do to the UX side, and they're working together. And I just need to support his decision to get this done. And then I also have to translate that up to the higher ups, like, okay, we're shifting this a little. We've had a shift in manpower. Here's what we're going to do now. And then I have to translate that in a non-technical way to, the CEO and the CFO, what's happening.
Yep.
And we got it in the time and the budget. And that first time you do something like that, you're just like a little bit of you's like, oh no, but I know exactly what we need to do. It's like, No, you got to trust. You got to trust your team, and you got to trust the professionals working with you to do the job.
100%. Drew, one final, very random question to you. What do you do when you are not working?
Ooh, I feel like I'm working all the time, actually, which is I have two young boys that keep me busy, and I live on a hobby farm up outside the Twin Cities. That keeps me on my feet. So we have a couple of horses here, and I have a little orchard, a small apple orchard that I work on when I'm not wrangling the two boys. And then I have this little mini letterpress studio behind me. This is sort of my release valve as well when the kids are asleep. I come and you can typeset children. So I'm working on typesetting a children's poem book that
Oh,
working on for my kids, which would be fun. And I'm going to or letterpress it with them. And it's I like to keep creative in my time off so that I'm and get my hands dirty in my time off so that I'm feeling connected outside of the digital world.
you go back to that time in art school, those first 2 years that you mentioned when you were building stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I like having the ink stuck under my nails from time to
Right,
time and
right.
the press grease staining my shirts.
It's good. It's good. Drew, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to continue having conversations with you, and maybe we can do an episode sometime again in the future.
Great. Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me on.